talk to you today. I realize I'm in front of a lot of people with a ton of wisdom and a lot of life experience, and I'm hoping that some things that I say today you can take with you and start to apply it in your life and hopefully improve the quality of your life. So how today is going to go, we're going to talk about the world that you guys grew up in, some differences as to how the world is now, and how it all affects the mobility and flexibility of our human body. I'm going to go over and explain the difference. What is mobility? What is flexibility? What's the difference? And how do we address each one? Why is it important to know where we're at with our flexibility and mobility before we actually start exercising? I walked over to your exercise room. It's a beautiful facility, and it's good to know what things you should be doing when you start an exercise program. And if you notice from your handout, we start with our athlete hierarchy of development with flexibility first. We want to make sure that you have the prerequisite flexibility and mobility. So we're going to talk about the differences there. And then I'm going to give you the ways you can start to work on it on your own with no equipment at all, or coming in here and working with some equipment. So I'll give you guys some ideas that you can start developing your own program for yourself. So why would you listen to me? A little bit about me and how did I get in front of you today? So I'm a Navy vet. That's when I started my coaching career. I was put in charge of helping people that couldn't pass the PE test. I got out of the Navy in 2010 and continued working with people, joined my first CrossFit gym. The reason I got drawn to CrossFit is because it teaches functional movement. So functional movement it resonated with me because what that means is movements that we use in our daily life. You have to be able to sit down. You have to be able to pick stuff up. You have to be able to press things up overhead. So that really drew me to that methodology, and that started me down this path. When I got out of the Navy, I went to UNLV, started my physical therapy program, and found that I could make a bigger difference opening a gym and teaching people functional movement, more so than continuing my degree. So now I'm a gym owner. I've owned it for 8 years, and I'm helping people improve their flexibility and mobility that way instead of going the physical therapy route. As I opened my gym, it took a lot of different phases. When I first opened, I was very much a competitor. I wanted to compete in CrossFit, and as I started on that journey, I realized this was unsustainable, and I wasn't fulfilled in that anymore. I wanted to help people have a better quality of life and be able to exercise for the rest of their life. And the competitive part of CrossFit is a very little window. Even the top competitors in it, it's good for a couple years, and then their body's not going to be able to handle that volume of training. So I shifted my whole business model to training competitors, to now training people exactly like yourself, myself, and I just want to be able to work out for the rest of my life and empower others to also be able to exercise for the rest of their life. Because that's a very important part. We need to be able to have an exercise program that we can sustain forever. The fitness industry has changed drastically in your guys' lifetime, and you've watched it. And I want to highlight some things that are way different in this day and age from the kids growing up now to when you grew up. You probably didn't even know it, but your lifestyle was extremely helpful. It helped you maintain your mobility, it helped you maintain your health, it helped you monitor how much weight you gained. There were way less problems back then. And there was way less need for someone like me. There probably wasn't a bunch of fitness professionals and health professionals as you guys were growing up because there wasn't much need for them. And that was because you had a ton of very good lifestyle habits, probably without even knowing it. So I want to go over some things that you were doing then that were extremely good for your health, and then what we do now that are holding us back in some areas, especially revolving around flexibility and mobility. So when you were growing up, you walked around a lot more. There were way less jobs that required sitting for 8 hours a day. There was way more movement involved. You ran, as kids, you ran outside, you played with each other, you didn't have a cell phone or an iPad that you were glued to and adopting this shape as you were growing up. PE in your schools, and I got all this from talking to some of my clients, my parents, my grandparents. PE in school revolved around hanging, rope climbing, running. There's no rope climbs in school anymore. I was blown away. My dad told me he was the best rope climber, so that's really cool. Those are things that you grew up with, and we do not have those in the schools anymore. The food you ate was way less processed. Even the food that you were familiar with, a Snickers bar, the ingredients back then was way different than what it is now. And so that does translate to flexibility and mobility because of some of the inflammation that those ingredients cause. You ate from more local food sources. We didn't have the systems developed that you could get food from clear across the world into your kitchen. Most of you probably had local sources that you would get your food from. And then the best medicine was mom's homemade chicken. When you got chicken noodle soup, right? When you got sick, what was the thing? You ate the chicken noodle soup. So let's contrast that to what we have now. And these things have changed drastically, and there's a direct correlation to mobility and flexibility and how it affects the body. So many of us have to sit most of the day. I have clients that have jobs that require them to sit for 8 hours a day, and one of my biggest complaints when I work with a new client is back pain. Sitting in this shape is not meant for humans. We are bombarded by information on such a massive scale that stress has just become a part of our life. And being in a high stress state does affect mobility and flexibility. It affects your entire body. Most things that we eat now are processed to the point that we don't really even know what it's actually made out of. We know it tastes good, but we're not quite sure what's there. So the ingredients are affecting our bodies as well. And we don't get outside and play due to the amount of information that we can start looking up online or the unlimited amount of TV channels that we can occupy our time with. So we get outside way less than we used to. These things have changed and they've all affected our flexibility and mobility. So now let's talk about what is the difference between flexibility and mobility. Does anyone have an idea without looking at your paper? Yeah? So flexibility, the textbook term, is the inactive range of motion of a joint. So everyone just hold up your finger just like this. And then take the other hand and don't be hurting yourself, don't go crazy, but barely pull back on your finger just a little bit. That's how much flexibility that joint has. So now, that's flexibility. I can take it to the end range. If I go any further, I'll pop my finger out. Now, mobility is I can take my finger and pull it back as far as I can. This is active range of motion. This is how much mobility my finger has. How much can I do it without pushing on it? Does that make sense for everyone? All right, cool. Flexibility, inactive, mobility, active. So why is it important that we need to know where we are at in flexibility and mobility before we start an exercise program? Why would that be so important? Yeah, and we need to make sure that the joint moves in the way that we want to do the exercise asking us to do. So for example, if I decide I want to get stronger shoulders, and I look online and one of the exercises is to do a strict press, I need to make sure that my shoulder goes up overhead before I start doing an exercise that involves me to press it up overhead. So that's just a simple example of why it's important to know where you're at as you're making your exercise selection. All right? And then why would it be important to know how much mobility you have before you start an exercise program? Probably same basic thing, right? You don't want to get hurt, you don't want to do something you're not ready for. So what a good example of a mobility, a way to test your mobility, is a squat. So I have clients, we'll test them first. How far can you go down? And we're having them sit to a seat where you have control. So if I see someone, make sure everyone can see me, start to sit down and then they collapse. They collapse right to the chair. Okay, I know how much range of motion that you have. We will start to strengthen that range of motion. So you find that, and then you set up a box height, and you start to strengthen that range of motion. So you find, okay, I can do a quarter squat, not a full squat, because I want to make sure I'm developing all the muscles and increasing my mobility, my control in the range of motion that I'm trying to do. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, cool. Perfect. So now, what are some ways that you can work on your flexibility? Does anyone, this one's not too much of a tricky question. What was that? Stretching. Perfect. Stretching, that's my number one. So passive stretching is what we call it. This is going to be what you're all very familiar with. Getting a stretch and holding it for a set amount of time. I want you to hinge over, hold the joint at its end range for 30 seconds. Say, that would be something you could do to improve your flexibility. Just taking the joint to end range and holding it there and trying to relax the muscle. Dynamic stretching. So dynamic stretching is moving and you're barely touching end range. So a good example of that would be arm swings or leg swings. I'm barely touching that end range of the joint, and then over time that will get greater and greater. Cool, so we got passive stretching, we have dynamic stretching, and then my favorite is, it's called eccentric loading. Basically this means we go super slow to the end range, and what we've found is that, when I say we, the science, has found that that starts to lengthen the muscle tissues, and it's actually the best out of the two that I just talked about. So eccentric loading would be, instead of just hanging out at this end range, you're going to get set up, slowly go down to that end range. Once you reach it, you can do a quick pause and then stand. And you would do reps of that. The slow moving over time can slowly start to lengthen your tissues, which will then free up flexibility for you. So, any questions about the 3 ways to improve flexibility? Now, there are more ways, but those are the simplest with no equipment. All right? So, what are some ways that we can improve mobility? I touched on one of these a little bit ago.
The arm, I think I remember doing trials. I live on the other side of the community. Like, whenever you do something like this with your
So moving, yeah. So one of the greatest ways is just finding what range you have and making that range stronger. So when I start working with someone, we do a little test. I'll go back to the squat analogy. How low can you squat while maintaining control? Maybe it's only to there and then you lose some control. So I'm like, cool, I know where that range is at. Let's make that range stronger by doing some reps, by adding a little bit of weight and keeping that on repeat. And then as that movement gets stronger, what we found as, it gives you greater ranges that you can work from. So yeah, first week, maybe it was only to here. Second week, we got to here. 6 months from now, you can do a full squat. All right, so it's a journey, but by making the ranges that you already have stronger, it will give you access to more ranges later. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool, perfect. Static holds are something that we do a lot. So that would be, I'll come back to my press analogy. So say you have range where you can get to here. I'll have you just hold something up overhead, and then we can do this for time. You can do 10 seconds, then work up to 20 seconds, up to 30 seconds, and then over time, I'm going to start having you hold at greater ranges. And this can help improve the mobility of that joint because you're having to work to get that If you sat here and just tried to pull your finger back and you held that position for a long time, you would gain greater mobility in that range of motion. Cool? Any questions on that? We're a big fan of holds, just holding things at end range. And the last one, and this is also a reason why I love eccentric loading, is we call it tempo work, and this can increase flexibility and mobility. So that's why we do it a lot when we're working with our clients, because it knocks two birds out with one stone. They get to control the range of motion. So an example of that, if I'm coming back to my squat analogy, is working the range of motion very slowly so you can make sure that you have the mobility in that movement. You have control the entire time. Does that make sense? So I love tempo work. I love moving slow and making sure that you have control the entire time. Yes, sir.
And one of my situations, I have a lot of muscle in my thighs, and I can probably do that, but maybe not as far down as you can, because just all the muscle I have in here as well, both my legs. So.
Good, absolutely. Not everyone's different. You're a little bit ahead of me. I'm going to address that. So, any questions on the ways we can improve our flexibility and our mobility? Is there anything that was unclear? Cool. So, the biggest thing, and this is what this gentleman was just describing, everyone's different, right? So, what this means is there's some tips to start setting yourself up for success. And we talked a little bit about this in the beginning. So, you want to start working on your flexibility and mobility. First thing you guys need to do is find out what range of motion do you have. Okay, so you can put yourself through some tests, see where you're at with certain things, so you get a baseline. And now you need to decide, what things am I going to start doing to work on this? You can open Instagram and YouTube, and it is just a sea of information. A lot of it's contradictory, and it's very confusing, and it can become overwhelming. So you want to simplify that the best you can, pick 2 or 3 things that you want to do, and then settle in for the long haul. Consistency is the #1 thing that equals results. And I want everyone to picture a ball of paper towels, and this is what starts to happen. People do really good for a week or 2 weeks. If you had a huge roll of paper towels and each sheet represented a day, you did 2 weeks, you took out 14 sheets. Would you notice much difference in that big roll? Okay, so you're not going to notice much difference once you start working on this stuff in 2 weeks. You just won't. So you have to develop a plan and understand that I'm in this for the long haul. I need to make sure this becomes a part of my life. Now, what would happen if you did this for 6 months? How many sheets of the roll is that? You're going to see some significant difference, right? Cool. So I like to make that analogy because that's how long it takes to fix some of these things sometimes, or to even see some change. Decide what time you're going to do these exercises, all right? Put it in your calendar, and then stay true to your calendar so you can stick with it. Get a friend. Find someone that wants to work on their flexibility and mobility, and meet at the same time. Hold each other accountable. It's easy to let this go. You let it go for a day, I'll do it tomorrow, and then the next day, and then it turns into I start Monday. And then Monday comes up and you're like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it. Next month, start of the month, that's when it starts. And then then it becomes, you just never get around to it. So you want a support group. And then I just can't stress that enough. Consistency is the key. So getting a support group around you and setting up the time that you're doing it is beyond important. So now, what I'd like to do is open up the floor for any questions that you have for me. And if there aren't any, I have some of my clients that I've worked first things we would look at is what joints are involved in walking. What are you using? So I'll help you, let's break that down. What would be the main things? Knees, right? Knees, okay. Ankles, and hips. Okay, cool. And with walking, I don't need much range of motion. I don't have to bring this. So what we would want to do is make sure that we're maintaining those joints that are being used when we're walking. So if you want more walking, you would want to make sure that you're stretching your ankles, making sure you're moving your knees through big ranges of motion to keep those joints healthy, and that will translate to keeping you walking longer. Does that help you? So first, find out what joints are working. How do I maintenance those joints? If I'm going to start walking more, I also have to maintenance them. I have to make sure I keep them healthy. Yes?
Building on his question, what if endurance is your problem?
Endurance, like cardiovascular endurance? Or just the body being...
Tired and you're achy, just going around a lot.
Yeah, so with that, we're getting a little off mobility and flexibility, but it still is great to talk about this. You just want to start a progression. How far can you walk? So say you can walk 100 meters, and then you start getting tired. You would walk your 100 meters 3 days a week, and then increase that to 150. And you want to start a slow progression. A lot of people, what they do when they start exercising is they'll remember, what did I used to do? Okay, I used to run 5 miles. I haven't ran in 5 years. But let me go run 5 miles. And then problems will inevitably start to happen. Plantar fasciitis, your knees are gonna ache, and that's just a volume issue. I went too much too soon. So to work on your endurance, you want to start a progression. Okay, this week I'm gonna go this far. This week I'm gonna go this far. This week I'm gonna go more. And it's the same thing with time. You keep that going over 2 weeks, you won't see much. 2 years, you are walking considerably longer than you used to. Does that help? Okay, cool. And the biggest thing is just developing a plan. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
When you walk, you use your lower back.
Okay. You do? Oh, absolutely. You're standing upright, so there are joints moving, and I didn't even think you're using your lower back, your core, your abs have to be working. If these weren't working, I would just fall down in a noodle. So these have to be stronger, you're right. So before you start walking longer distances, you want to make sure, is my body strong enough to handle these distances? Can I stay upright? Am I strong enough in my back muscles and my core muscles to keep me going long term, as long as I want? Yeah, absolutely. I'll let you guys out. Those are awesome questions. Yeah. All right, cool guys. Well, now I have a couple guests. I have Sophia, Bonnie, Pam, and Arthur didn't show up. But I'll have them come up, talk about their experiences from working with us and what they've gained, what they now have access to. And then, and I'll be around. We'll finish with that, and I'll be around to answer any other questions that you guys have. I gave you a card if you're interested in more information and want more help with this. Please, Ashley and myself will be here after, and just give us your information. I'll reach out. Yes, ma'am?
Where is your gym?
Smoke Ranch and Tenaya. So if you take Lake Mead all the way down to that Whole Foods, I'm literally down the block from there on Smoke Ranch. Kitty corner from Cimarron High School. All right, you three. Who's coming first?
I vote for Pam.
All right, Pam.
I really loved what you said. I love what you said, Colby. I'm sure you connect with what he said.
Yeah, because that's something you learn.
When COVID hit last year, I was
Use the microphone.
sorry. When COVID hit last year, I was 50
Stand
pounds
closer to mine.
better.
Yeah.
I was 50 pounds heavier than I am now. Paula remembers me because we were just connecting then. And I could not walk around Sun City. I live on Phase. No matter where I go, I'm up or downhill. used to walk across parking lots with limping, pain in my knees. I used to have injections in my knees every 6 months. It didn't dawn on me until a couple of weeks ago when I said to Colby, I haven't even thought about those injections. I have no pain in my knees. I've got bone arthritis in both of them. Just working with Colby, I don't do anything crazy. No. But I'm in no pain. I used to have to stop cleaning my house because my back hurt so much. I clean my house now, no pain. I cannot emphasize that enough. It took a while. I had to kind of sort of back off my stubbornness, admit that this young man knew better than I did. Not easy to do when you're 75. But I learned to have patience and to listen and to do what was suggested. And that what I was doing was enough. I used to feel that I'm not hurting enough. Is this really working? And I've got to be honest that when I'm done with working out, I know I couldn't do any more, but I am not hurting. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I know I've put in everything I need to put in, and I can still go about my day. My balance, I can't tell you how much my balance has improved. Most of you know how high our ridiculous smoke alarms are in our house. I can change them. I'm not afraid to get up on that ladder now. I can sense this is too much, or I'm okay. I don't have to call a handyman to change my light bulbs and my bloody smoke alarms anymore. I mean, this is awesome because I live alone. And I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid of falling. I've gone to catch, and I catch myself. I'm not afraid of that anymore. I'm living a life I never thought I could live. I feel 20 years younger. I feel like I can do more than I ever could. I'm actually jogging. Not very much. But I am actually jogging. I can skip rope. I can't tell you how much this has improved my life. I really cannot tell you how much this has improved my life. One of the biggest things Colby touched on is consistency. And that for me is belonging to a place where I feel comfortable. I'm never put down, I'm never judged, I'm always encouraged, and I look forward to going. There was a time when I couldn't do very much because I had a medical issue, but I kept going because I was encouraged to keep going. That consistency is what saved me. I'm convinced of it. Because without that consistency, I would have stopped going. And like Colby just said, we all know it. You start for a day, it's 2 days, it's a week, and the next day it's 6 months and 60 pounds later, and you say, how the hell did this happen again? Consistency. So personally, I will rave as long as you want me to about how awesome this is and how much it's changed my life. But I probably made a good point.
I'm gonna remove my mask so everybody can hear me.
Okay.
Ma'am, I've heard a lot about you from Sophia. We're friends from years and years and years and years ago. And I'm proud for you, very proud of you. However, I have a smoke alarm that needs.
She's like, so you're coming over?
Here it is, tell us.
Bonnie, do you want to say something?
You may regret this, 43 years in front of classrooms. I can talk for hours. COVID, we know what happened. We sat at home and watched TV and played. At one point, I found I had 75 words with friends games going on at one time. Yeah, so yeah, that gets to be a bit much. And then your back starts hurting. And I ended up, I've always had some sciatica problems. I was in a car accident in 1990 that messed up my leg. So I'm kind of not in the right way with everything because nothing ever really got back to the same. But sitting didn't help me. Sciatica got really bad. I ended up at the doctor. Of course, they did an MRI. Pretty much they promised me surgery and back injections and all kinds of stuff that didn't sound real appealing to me. And so I had met Pam, and I was still hiking a little bit, but I had been hiking that's not good at all, so that kept me scared. And then the ultimate thing, she had wanted to change her smoke alarm. I just wanted to open a pickle jar. You know, I just opened a pickle jar because I thought I was losing the strength in my hand to be able to do that. And when you live alone, my poor little chihuahua's looking at me like, well, what are you gonna do? So I had watched Pam a bit, and I ended up over there talking to Colby, and I said, look, I'm looking for somebody to keep me upright, keep balance. I can't fall again. And I want to be able to go out and get back to hiking the way I was. I was on a couple of different pain medications that were really making me goofy, and I didn't like that feeling. So that's where I started with. And when I got there, I don't remember, was it March or April that I started? But about six to 8 weeks in, I realized when I went into my doctor and he said, well, I was going to renew my prescriptions for the pain meds. Told him no bother. I was in no more pain. I have not even had a leave since that time. You know, it is, my joints are working. My sciatica, yeah, there are times like I just got back from a trip where I drove for, like 10 hours straight. And yeah, I'm a little stiff from that, but I know that I can get out, I can stretch a little bit, move around, and I'm going to be okay. But I didn't go looking for any pain medication. And I can open the door. So, but yes, sir.
I just have a comment. I know what those kind of jars are. To be honest with you, even I have a little time opening up those, like one of those little plastic,
Yeah.
things. And some of those jars are very, very tight, even for, I mean, I have a good amount of muscle, but just with my bare head, I can't open those up either.
Right, yeah, and and like I said, when you're living alone, if you can't stay upright, if you can't move, if you can't open a jar by yourself, you're sitting there and the next thing is going, what else am I not going to be able to do? And how long am I going to be able to live alone without help? And that gets kind of scary. Very scary for many of us. So at this point, this morning I did a 3-mile hike before I got here, Charleston. Not real long, but it was long enough to see all the beautiful flowers, or not flowers, the trees, they're all changing color. And I'm just fine. I have not fallen in months. I know that there have been times where I kind of, wobbled, but I've been able to catch myself. I know there have been times when a dog has gotten in front of me because in addition to my own dogs, I have foster dogs and they aren't always well trained. So they get in front of me and I sometimes kind of wobble there too. But I haven't fallen on a dog or fallen over a dog in all this time because I now have the ability to stand straight and do things and I can open the pickle jar. That's the big thing.
Hello everyone, I'm I'm president of the Sun City Social Club, and if you're not a member, please consider joining. So, we hold a lot of events. The last one we held pre-COVID was February 2020, where I met Pam. It was one of her very first outings, and she was sitting by herself, or no, she was sitting with a group of guys. This timid little lady I saw, I went to talk to her, she stood up, we walked slowly to the other table with a couple of other people, and I left her there sitting comfortably. Fast forward to November 2020, on the Facebook Social Club, I saw Pam, and she looked like a completely different person. So, Pam, what did you do? She tells me about CrossFit and vanity here. My sisters, 2 younger, were coming to visit, and I wanted to be in shape. I wanted to go hiking with them. I wanted to lose 10 pounds, because you always want to lose weight when your younger sisters are around. You want to look as cute as they are. So I went to Coach, and my coach, Coach Ty, has helped me, first of all, with the hiking. We started off with this. I thought, what is this? And again, it took us 2 months, but I was able to do the 5-mile hike around Craft Mountain. Oh, the excitement of being able to do it, the cardio. I lost 10 pounds, and this was just in 2-3 months, because of course it was the exercise, but they also had these giant posters on the wall about real food and what you're supposed to eat versus what I was eating, still am eating, but that's what's keeping me coming every other day. I go 3 times a week. I work on my mobility and flexibility. I told Coach the other day, why don't we do the crunches? I wanna do cardio. Well, we were doing some other exercise the next day. This whole area, but the abs that I wanted to do with the crunches that I was used to, oh my gosh. And it was just a sideways thing. So it's the exercise that is geared to what I can do. I remember when I was in my 40s and I could do the crunches. Well, I can't do them now, but I can still do exercises that but address the areas that I want addressed. And I can do them without any pain. Oh, and I can also balance. I was not able to balance. So, this is the first, this is how I started. I would go like this, and I would be all wobbly, just right here. And so now, I stand in the grocery store, and I go like this, but, and on both sides. But I remember starting November 2020, and not being able to do this on both, much less the back. Anyway, I love that I met Pam and that she inspired me to start going. And Coach Ty keeps me there.
Yes.
Okay, so all 3 of you live in Sun City? Okay, so, how does this differ? There's a million exercise classes here, basically for free. I go to one every day, and how is that different from paying?
Oh, 3 people want to answer. Wait, let me answer first. When I first got here, I did sign up for personal training by somebody that Sun City offered. I forget her name. And it was, I don't know, $500, $600, $700 for 5 sessions. And of those 5 sessions, I didn't feel like I was always afraid of being hurt. I got hurt in an accident in my 40s, and so I was always afraid of injury. So I didn't want to do it, and she was just there for that hour, whether I did it or not. I have another session, so I didn't get anything out of it. And then going to the fitness centers, I look at all the machines. I went through the how do you use the machines, but then the next day I go back and I look at the machine and I try to remember, and I look at a little diagram and I try to do it and I do, but it just doesn't feel like I'm doing it right, or I'm gonna hurt myself with my shoulder. And then I'm at pain.
The biggest thing that you said is, say if you go to an exercise class, that's not what we're doing. This is custom for you. So when we talked about, we are finding where your ranges of motion are, and then we're working and we're developing a program for you. It's custom. So that's the difference of why exercise classes have a cookie cutter template as to what the plan is, and it doesn't revolve around what you need. So for some people, they are they work. But if you want to address where you're at, that's why when we start working with someone, the first several sessions are mini tests. We see what we're working with, and then we start building out a plan. Does that make sense of why it's different from just going to an exercise class that has a script? Yeah, go ahead.
Again, so you can share. I went to a lot of the exercise classes, and I've been going to exercise classes since Jane, Make It Burn, right? And pretty much when I got here and started taking the exercise classes, it was, every teacher was like, well, do what you can do. Well, I can do what I can do, but I wasn't finding out what I was capable of, and I wasn't moving forward. Because I would get to a little point, well, that hurts, so I'm not gonna do that again. And the same going over and working on the machines, yeah, I can do all these amount of reps, but every day I do those amount of reps, the same thing, without making any progression. And it's helpful to have somebody who's sitting there going, okay, I can see you can do this, now we increase the duration, we increase the
Straighten that leg,
yeah.
straighten that leg.
All those things, yeah, those things, so that you actually are progressing to do the next, to make the range of motion, the strength, the endurance, all of that, so that you can move on to the next thing and keep moving to whatever your goal is.
You're not wasting your time doing an exercise that's not serving what you want.
Yeah, or stopping the exercise because, dang, that hurts.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference. I identify a lot with Sophia. I've done the classes here, I've done personal training here, which is expensive, and not gotten what I wanted. First thing I would say is when you go to Colby's gym, you will be personally assessed, joint by joint, muscle by muscle. You will never be asked to do anything that you cannot do. The emphasis is huge on safety at the Combine, huge. I can't count, I wish I had $1 for every time Colby said to me, I think you can do more, but I want to wait and see how you feel tomorrow. They understand you, the individual. It's not a group class, it's what you want. They will have a conversation with you about your goals. It's what you want. Do you want to just live? Do you want to walk? Do you want to play basketball? Your program will be geared to you personally. Periodically, you'll be asked if you go. Are your goals still the same? And there's no put down if your goals are. How many times did I change my goals? As I develop, I find that I want. Hey, I can do this. I didn't think I could. I'd rather focus on that. My focus right now, so I identify with this gentleman so much, is endurance for hiking. I want to be able to hike longer, not just hike, but I want to be able to get out there and do it longer. Colby's working with me on that. Now, I emphasize Colby all the time because he happens to be my coaching piece of what I work with. All of his coaches are just as enthusiastic and dedicated as he is. There is no comparison in my book, no comparison. There's so much more I want to say and I can't think about it. Really, the personal assessment, the ability to look at you and to get to know you, to get to know something's off today, to change today's workout on the fly because they see something different in your ability today. It's huge. I can't recommend it enough.
I think they definitely answered your question. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I went to your website
Okay.
and I was looking at it, and I
said programs, and I thought it was gonna give me some prices and things,
Yeah.
and it says page does not exist.
Okay. We
So,
have some
what are
website.
we talking about cost-wise?
Yeah, so all different options. The reason I don't have the price on the website is because I want to make sure that we're even a good fit for someone. And then I have different programs, so I would want to make sure that I put you in the program that will best serve your needs. I have a group class that revolves around general physical preparedness, and it's great for generally physically fit people, and that's $199 a month. I have a Fit for Life class that's not one-on-one attention. You get one one-on-one session a month, and then custom programming that you can do on your own. And this is something that you can graduate to after about 24 to 48 one-on-one sessions, and that's $439 a month. And then my premium package is personal training. That's, you get your personal coach. They watch every single movement you do. They build your program, and some may need many more sessions to get you to a point where we can turn you loose to the Fit for Life class. But the starting with one-on-one will range depending on the package that you buy.
How many days a week are we talking?
My coach is like at least 3 days a week, and then there will be some homework possibly in the days
Hour at the gym?
anywhere from an hour to 45 minutes. Yeah. And the packages will depend on how many sessions you buy. Oh, good question.
Is it covered by any health
Cool.
insurance?
What was that?
Is it covered by any health insurance?
Not yet. But, 10 years down the road, we're moving in that direction. Because I think the gym is preventative, and that's what I want. I want to be able to help people be proactive with their health and not wait until there's a major problem and then end up in the system of pills and things, and it's a downhill slope. So that's my goal. Awesome. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to speak with you guys. This has been great. Myself and Ashley, if you would like more information and set up a consultation with me and see if we will even be able to help you, please fill out the card. You can hand it to myself and Ashley. I'll set up an hour where we can talk about your specific needs and talk about what package is right for you if you're interested. We'll be around after.